our strategic planning
information.
So we have Jennifer Chase here. You all remember Jennifer. And Jennifer is from the Source School, and she has been helping to run and facilitate all of the community conversations that is going to help lead to the development of our strategic planning process. So Jen is here tonight to begin showing us some of the feedback that we received through that entire process. So I think we actually get to hear tonight some of the actual conversations that occurred. So I'm just going to turn it over to Jennifer. Thank you, welcome for being here, and I know that Angela is going to chime in and help a bit too, right?
I'm going to walk around and help if you get stuck on your computer, and if I don't know how to help you, we're going to ask Terry.
Gotcha.
The key is to log into your email. And then you will have received an email from me, and you click on the Google form invite, and that will bring you, that's all you need to do technologically tonight. But
Right.
I would be kind to Terry, and try to make this simple.
There's no doc in the email that you sent.
There's,
It's just deep.
unless we have one already, let's find out.
Mine, I have to go into my other email because mine.
Okay, well, you just have to look at my email there for a second.
There you go, now you got your password.
Let's see.
Oh, I know.
You're doing okay?
So I'll send it again. For some reason that didn't.
Oh, no.
It's- So Pat, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay.
And then you can forward it, because I'm guessing you have a list. Also, I wondered if it was gonna be problematic that you all have the school district email and I don't. Sometimes attachments and things won't go through. That happens to me a lot. So.
Sorry. Can't be really-
Yep. This is.
That's what I'm here for.
Follow you on Instagram.
Oh,
Shelby's.
have you ever done this before?
I've
We're
never
gonna
needed
try
a
to skip
pin.
it.
Oh.
There we go.
I love skipping.
Did you receive the email? Because our emails go back and forth easily, and I've sent you
Oh, here it
attachments
is.
before. Okay.
Okay, let me just make sure that it works.
Okay.
Yes,
Sure, I need my password.
I see it. Very good. Right, so I'm gonna forward it to all of you who are in this room.
All right, let's see if you might not have this in here because. Yep, so hang on a minute and we're gonna look for an email from Pat. Not even in
Oh.
space yet.
I forgot one person, sorry.
Through, you can either wait or you can hit refresh.
Megan, sorry, I forgot you. Oh, there you go. I knew I was missing someone, but you weren't sitting right
I
there.
know.
I was going around the room.
Yep, she's in her email. We're good.
Okay,
Waiting for it to come through.
you all receive it?
Terry sees me, she's like, oh no.
So,
I tried to make this seem super straightforward.
No. What from
Refresh,
me?
right.
What refresh it from me?
There it is.
There, click on that.
Oh, man.
Did you all receive did the Google form work for you all at that end?
No, I'll never turn down heat. Warmer the better.
Pat,
Okay, now you're ready.
I just
So
did.
wait for directions.
Okey doke.
There you go.
It's actually not a bad thing for the board to use the computers that the students use, right?
Yeah.
Chance to try them out.
I know my legacy is I have a Chromebook from like 2011 that my older two, and it still works. If I bring it here, it'll work. It's like it's pristine. Don't touch it. Yeah.
Because it already
Right,
exists.
well, I think we could get started. It sounds like pretty much everyone's into their email and, yep, okay, great. So I just wanted to say first that it really has been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to get to know your community in this way. I feel like actually, like, what am I gonna do when I'm not listening to all these gardener conversations? It's really been an immersion, you know, and it feels like this when you enter a community and you have conversation with 26 different groups and over 100 different people. And not only do we host the focus group and really be in that space, face to face with people, because some of the conversations were in person, some were on Zoom. But also we listen to them again and again to try to make sense of them, you know, and so to analyze them, you really have to listen closely. And so yeah, I feel like it's been a privilege and I really appreciate you all bringing me in and giving us this opportunity. So tonight, I just wanted to do a few things. Give you an overview of the data collection process and the numbers, just like few facts, just to give you the background on that. And then that's where I feel like Angela and Pat, if you want to chime in on that process as well. And then give you a chance to hear some of what we've collected. This is just a brief, you know, not a timeline, a storyline, a narrative for you to experience, hear the voices of the people in the community, and then have a chance to reflect on what this means to you. So the sense making, this is called the sense making session. The sense making is you're making sense of what you're hearing and just capturing that in this Google form. And I've given you some starter questions there. And those are some really great things I think to think about when, after you'll hear a few of the clips, and then you'll have a few minutes at each time to just think and reflect and answer some questions there. And so when you do that, I will receive those answers. They're not actually, it's not collecting your email. So it's really just a way for it, because it doesn't really matter necessarily which of you had those thoughts. It's that all of those will feed into the analysis that we do to really help us understand what's most meaningful to you. And that's what we have told all the participants so far. They've participated in a focus group, and then next level, they've come to a sense-making session. And we had one for students, we had one for educators, we had one for community members. And what they would do is they would go through a transcript of their conversation. They could listen to it, they could read it, and they would highlight with a little highlighting tool what was meaningful to them. And then they would write a little memo about why. And those were really fun and engaging for them to kind of get in and listen. And Becky, you participated.
I did,
in one.
super fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And then after the conversation, right, Becky, like then there's this conversation because they've heard, again, what they were participating in, made some sense of it, and now it stimulated some new discussion. And so that's why I'm hoping that your kind of collected thoughts and reflections help us think more deeply about it, but then we'll also give you a jumping off point to discuss more deeply when you receive our final report. So that gives a little overview. So just to jump into the data collection process, I have some statistics. So we had 26 focus groups across, we had parents, greater community members, educators, which includes school staff, classroom teachers, administrators, but vast majority were classroom educators. And we had, so community members, youth, educators, right, and then the parents as a separate group. So we had kind of, I would say roughly equal, not exactly equal, but we worked really hard at the end to really make sure that we had, frankly, bless you, enough educators, because it's hard for educators to step out of the classroom. But we all agreed that we really didn't want to stop the process until we had more of those voices. And I have to say that last focus group was immensely informative and helpful. And, you know, following the focus groups, we had a sense-making session, which I think we had 15 people come to. All of a sudden, once they participated in the conversation, they were eager to come and reflect on it. And we probably stayed for an hour and a half after the sense-making session, just chatting with people because they were really interested in talking with each other and talking with us. And so that's kind of what we hope this process leads to. So around 130 participants, Zoom and in person. We went to the Boys and Girls Club and did some family conversations there because we were having a hard time getting families onto Zoom. We also went to the high school and had the teacher conversations in person to make sure that people could access that, people who didn't feel as comfortable on Zoom maybe. And so just to say that the sample was purposive, meaning we sought out, Angela really did this, really sought out a wide variety of voices. And so there was the all call, everyone's invited to participate. Anybody could sign up. We didn't turn anybody away. No, we didn't turn anybody away, but also said, okay, so now here people have signed up, but who are we missing? Like really, who are we missing? And there was a lot of effort put into thinking through that in terms of student voices, educator and staff voices, and community voices. So it was not random, let's put it that way. And you don't really want that in this kind of thing. We had 4 different facilitators. It's also important to think about who's collecting the data. So we had 4 of us, me, and then 2 other women, one who's familiar with your district. So she did, I think, 2 focus groups, and then 1 man. We had people in their 20s, 30s, 50s, and 60s. So a wide variety of lived experiences in our facilitators. You know, you saw the questions that we asked, but a lot of the facilitating is in the conversation. You're listening, and what, you know, the facilitator brings their own experience and perspective. And so in any case, the variety in our facilitators adds something to the data collection as well. And then just to say my overall general impression that I would love to have you 2 pop into, and Becky, you participated, was a really warm community that really wanted to share their perspectives and didn't always feel comfortable right at the very beginning. So was that what you would say too?
Yes.
Okay.
They were happy they participated when they were done. Some people said it was therapeutic, but oftentimes went in with a little bit of reservation.
Yeah, generally people would come in quiet, come to the table, feel very official, and they would leave laughing and talking and connected. And so that's part of the value of this, is that you're building the community, you're not just gathering information, you know. And so when we hold the focus groups, we always say, and definitely train our facilitators in this way too, the highest priority is that people in that conversation leave having had a good conversation and connected to each other. And the really happy consequence of that is that we'll get great data. But that's not, we don't squeeze it out of people. It's really creating those conditions for people to feel connected. So I don't know if you wanted to jump in any more about the process that you went through to collect names, or anything about the process.
I think I was surprised coming out of COVID and all the online work we did, that it was actually a little bit harder to get people to join via Zoom. And that once we finally heard Jennifer and shifted gears, she mentioned it multiple times in advance. I just wasn't there yet. And we were able to run a series of in-person meetings with either the facilitators virtual, and there was a microphone in the sort of in the middle of, and they were able to circle up and look at each other, or have the facilitator on site as well. It made a really big difference for people in showing up and engaging, even though it took more time out of their schedule to travel to a common location and do that. I think the students appreciated the in-person more as well. But they were engaged either way. And just the value of being connected, but being connected and without the screen. They didn't have to go in with people they knew, really. They just were appreciative of the in-person.
Yeah, several of your teachers commented specifically that they really enjoyed talking with teachers from different buildings, or teaching different grade spans, or they just really enjoyed that, learning from each other's experiences. And yeah, that's why it was and a couple of them was like, well, you probably have a class you need to go to, right? Because oh my gosh, this is a fantastic, it was just joyful, I have to say, for some of them.
I'd also say we learned a lot about how to get people engaged and willing to participate. If so often we reach out to I'm not from this community. I've worked here 5 years. I'm really, I'm invested in this community, but I don't live here. And so my network is only so far. And Pat's network is much wider, and so accessing our formal leaders, and others, was really instrumental. But then starting to really think about some of the informal, oh wait, I know this mom who, she used to be on the PTA quite a bit. Her kids are a little bit older, but they're still in our schools. What if I reached out to her? And next thing I know, we got this diverse group of people from a community that I don't have any touch points with, but it took her 10 minutes, to get, a room full of people, and they were not all like-minded. So just, it was a good reminder about how how our community works, and how we learn and support each other, and how everyone has a stake and a voice. It's just a matter of getting them connected to the opportunity. It was cool.
And they don't have to think and be the same.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot
And
of
you
that.
actually didn't want that. Like, we
Right,
purposely didn't
right.
want everyone, you know, of the same ilk together. We wanted
Right.
really diverse, as widespread as we could get across our communities.
Yeah, that's actually something that you'll probably, I was thinking about today, and I'm sure will show up in our report too, is that it's where the outcome is shared, but the perspectives on how to get there is different. Like, that's the nexus, right? That's like where you, okay, so great, shared desires for kids to thrive and the community to thrive. And actually, in a couple of conversations, there were some perspectives where it got a little tiny bit tense, because people are feeling, well, here's my experience. And we always talk about our experiences. It's not about positions, it's what has happened to me, what's my story. But they were quite easily resolved through, it sounds like what you're talking about is you really want the community to be centered in making decisions about education. Yes. Okay. But we get down these side roads sometimes in our own conversations and think we're at cross purposes when actually they realize, no, we have a shared purpose. And actually, instead of saying parents or school, what we really mean is community. And that is easily agreed upon. And so, it was great. Pat, do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think I don't think so. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Becky, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just that it was such a great fun time. It really, when we gathered at the library when we did our interview online with John, that's his name, right? With John. It started dry, just like you said, but then we were almost talking over each other with excitement and anticipation. You were in my group, right? And just with excitement and stories and things we were learning about each other, and I think we could have stayed far longer. Again, even though it was online. And then when we got to the library, there were people there that I didn't expect. Patricia Welton was there. I've known her for like seemingly ever. And Alyssa was there, and we sat together and then other people that I still don't know their names, but they were there, and we just had we all wanted the same thing.
And thankfully, we had some technical support.
We did.
To never get everybody on.
Yeah.
I think I think unless people have questions, I want to just kind of get to you all being able to listen. Any questions about the process or comments?
I think we're curious.
Okay, great. All right, so if everyone's in the Google form, you can kind of see on here, I put this little, where it says what makes a good life, and there's a little number 4 next to it. That's my estimate for how long playing these little clips are going to be for you. So if you're wondering why that number is there, that's what that's for. I timed it.
Terry, are you able to make her screen bigger? Or not? If not, it's okay.
It doesn't, you don't actually need to see
It's right in front
it.
of you guys, right? Aren't you all on that doc or no?
No,
Okay.
they're in
It-
a form.
Give me a second.
I'm a teacher. I'm not going to give you anything that could distract you. So you actually already have a form, and if they close at the meeting, you will have a copy of it.
There we go.
Yeah, it's just you don't need to look at it, and then you.
The wizard behind the curtain got us what we asked for.
Pay no attention.
So I'm going to play the clip. We're just going to listen to it, and then I'm going to play all of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4 clips, and then we'll have this little break. And that's when you can type in, and feel free to type in even while you're listening. It's whatever works best for you, but we'll have a minute break between there, and then another minute. And we have a few longer ones here where we'll have 5 minutes in between. There's more to think about. And if people are finished reflecting before 5 minutes, we'll just move on. I just want to make sure you have some time.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I don't get the directions. What makes a good life? Am I formulating what I think these 4 people view of what makes a good life, or it's my own personal one?
Yeah, I think what may have happened at the top of the form, maybe scroll so you see the top of the form. There are a few questions that I put there. Those should guide your reflections. And if you have other things you want to put, don't let those questions stop you. It's just that hearing those from you would be
Oh, got it.
informative to us, but if you have other things you want to say, that's fine too.
I thought I
Just do
answered
the
these
Maddie
already.
thing, you're good.
right. And also just to say, that some of these things are gonna be really exciting for you all to hear, and some of them are gonna be hard to hear, because they're the stories of people's lives. You know, and so it is like, just to say, to kind of put this in that context of, this is a sort of precious moment where we're listening to people's sharing of the stories that they have from their lives, and some of them are hard, and some of them are joyful, and some of them are informative, and everything in between. And that this is just a very, very small sample of the whole collection. I put these together hopefully to give you a picture, starting from mostly students to mostly community, of the kind of arc of the major themes. And then we'll have time to discuss for about 15 minutes, hopefully afterwards, after you've heard all of these. Okay. All right, so let's make sure this works.
Make you happy and really just make your own decisions and don't let other people make them for you. And I personally think adults probably feel the same way. I know a lot of the adults I've talked to, they're like, well, I know my day is going good because I'm doing what I want to do. So.
Yeah. So like kind of what everyone else has been saying, for me to have a good life, I want to do what I want when I'm older. I want to have a job that I'm happy doing, even if I'm not earning a ton of money, because a lot of adults that I know, they think like, oh, if I get a job that I don't necessarily like, but I make a lot of money, I'll be happy. But that's not always true.
What it means to have a good life for me is, I agree with everybody else that with everything that they said. With my example, I actually don't really have that great of a life at the moment. I'm pretty much overworked and everything. I have pretty much 2 jobs. I babysit, I go to work at Subway, or that one. And I have school, so I don't really have time for myself that much. And with school and work and everything, you don't really have, like, you can go out and buy a burger from McDonald's and stuff like that, but you can't exactly survive that way. And I'm kind of sad that they took away home ec, where you can learn how to cook, you can learn how to sew, and everything like that, so you don't have to go out and buy new clothes whenever your clothes rip. You can just stitch them and keep wearing them. And I'm kind of sad, because I was actually hoping for that when I got into high school, and I never got that opportunity. They do have the CATC, but my first 2 years I wasn't doing great. I had really low grades since it was the start of the pandemic. It was horrible. And I wasn't able to do that.
For me, a good life is security, a place that I know is safe to live. I have my basic needs met, and I get to share those things with the people that I love and care about and have relationships with. It's celebrating successes and having people there when you're not successful, that are still there with you even when you're not successful. And I, like Amanda, am kind of spoiled and have a great life and have. The particular population that I work with don't necessarily have experienced that, so that's not necessarily what they consider a good life to be. They may think that a good life is the best Air Force Ones or whatever thing is coming, and it's not a reflection, it's just on what they've experienced. They don't know how the other things can make them feel. So that's a big topic in our classroom a lot of the time.
So we'll just take about a minute to reflect on that, and then we'll move on. right, so we're gonna start with the next section, and that just to say we started all of the student conversations and all of the educator conversations with that question, and the parent conversations too. What does it mean you have a good life? And you'll get in the final report a real rich picture of the great variety. And yet there's a lot of similarities: security, safety, feelings of hope for the future. So this next section, we talked with students about how they wanted to contribute, like how they imagined they would make contributions to their community as they grew older. And so here are some of the things that they talked about. And again, I picked these quotes because they're indicative of greater themes. So these are not standalones. The reason why they're included is because they are representative of. There are a couple, and I'll tell you which ones they are when we give you the report, that are standalones, but they're significant. We share them as a standalone because they make a significant point that is worth hearing.
Into the community, like volunteer work, like we need to get like a certain amount of community service to graduate, and I feel like community service is really important for the community, like helping like at the food pantry and stuff like that. And like careers could like fit in with that. Like I feel like there's a lot of careers that can help the community, like if whether you're like a doctor or like owning a small business. And for voting, I think the voting is important. I can't do it yet. But I feel like you should be voting if you want like your voice to be heard.
I want to help my community by making it so everyone in my community is able to be in affordable housing, whether that's giving fundraisers as well. I'm going to be an electrician when I grow up, so I can help them give discounts. And I think that's just going to help everyone continue on with their lives better.
Right now I'm going to CATC to be a chef, so I want to be able to like help the homeless and be able to like coach people's kids in like football or something.
Did you that?
Well, my future career I'm hoping for is going to be a plumber, and I can help with eliminating waste that people would just dump in rivers.
Yeah.
I think voting really matters to the community because it shows that you're looking for a better opportunity for your town or your state to continue on, whether it's getting the roads rebuilt or having a new hospital built or just better taxes, and someone who wants to help better the future of Maine. That's what I see as voting is, and how I think it's important.
Really, really thoughtful group of young people you have. So just a few minutes to reflect, or a minute or so just to reflect on that. These sharings are very much indicative of what was talked about. So the next set here, and the next medley is relationships between adults and youth. This was a very, very strong theme across all of the groups. So, in a way, if I had to pick one theme, which you never really want to have to pick one theme because life is so multidimensional, but if I had to pick one theme, it would be something around the relationships between adults and youth. There was just so meaningful to community members, to parents, to students, and to teachers. Equally so, it came up in all of our conversations without us really ever asking how we never asked, are adult student relationships important to you? But it came up in people's stories and what they were asking for and looking for and most valued. So here are just a few. It's from teachers and students.
Yeah, just to echo, I guess, what everyone has said, and what Mary had mentioned about the social piece, just because that's part of what I teach too in my curriculum, but and how you interact with people and how you build those. I keep going back to relationships, so I apologize, but I think it's super important, and especially at the high school where kids are switching classes, they're in lunch, they're in different activities, and how can they outside of these four walls, communicate with others to effectively put themselves in the best position to have success with whatever they just decide to do. And then
in a time that I felt where I mattered in my community, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I think teachers are very helpful in making students feel like they matter. So every time I go to school, I feel like the teachers genuinely care about not only the education that they're giving, but also helping to outside of school.
And there's always a push to do more. There's always this push of, this standard I need to meet. I need to keep the pace. I need to be in this. It's always there. So I think that does interfere with the relationships that I want to build with children, because I might be thinking, I need to get to this. We don't have time for this. Yeah. We need to move on.
I think having a good relationship with your teacher makes you feel better with the subject, and it's really important having a good friendship with your teacher. Makes you feel better and understand better everything. So, yeah.
Just a little break to surprise you. What questions do you have? So this next section is a little bit longer, so you get a longer break afterwards. And this is one of the other major themes is the students, the community members, the parents, and the teachers find value in this too, but we heard it so specifically from those first three. They're really looking for school to prepare them for life in all of its facets. And so I put on there adulting because some kids actually use that word. And they really mean family. People say how to balance a checkbook, although I don't know if anybody actually balances a checkbook anymore. I mean, I don't know, but I think what they mean is financial literacy, and that comes up in several conversations. Change a tire, just everything that it means to be an adult. And so there are quite a few through here because I think this came up it was such a prevalent, it was returned to again and again. And so there are just a bunch here for you to listen to.
I feel like, especially, I mean, in our regular classes, it's a little different in our CATC programs that by high school, it's really just a lot more unneeded stress than it is learning anything. Like we've learned accountability and everything else in middle school with our classes in middle school, whereas if we could have been using the last 4 years to actually be working on real life experiences instead of being stuck in a classroom where we're kind of just taught to sit down, be quiet, and listen to what the teacher tells you to.
Then there should be more of a focus on maybe life skill type classes. I know home ec is gone and dead, but I learned how to sew in my middle school home ec class, and when my uniforms tore, I could take a needle and thread and fix the hole. It didn't look pretty, but it was done. Learning how to cook, but even more importantly is the basics of not necessarily business class, but I mean balancing a checkbook, money management type classes, and don't even get me started about civics, which is a masterful thing that needs to happen. Because everyone wants to yell about how messed up the government is. If you don't know how it works, then you're just pulling the blurb that some other idiot said online and attaching your name to it. So I think,
for the record, I did not know that was you.
That's the best.
He has the best adjectives.
He does.
And actually, I'll interrupt the flow for just a moment to say this, that you might hear a few voices more than once, and that's because some people can articulate the thoughts of the group.
Yeah.
And not everyone has that gift. Mm-hmm. And so you will hear some similar voices, but it's not, we never pull that out because that one person was saying that. It was because they're really speaking for other people who took longer to say something similar.
I strongly agree with Lily that I feel like high school it prepares you for college, but not as much for life. School prepares you for more school, and I feel like as far as like life skills, we're kind of just dumped on our head really. As far as like buying a house, buying our own car, budgeting, all of that. Like we have been lucky enough, we have classes here called Life and Work and Career and Tech, which I have found extremely helpful, and I believe it will be helpful because it teaches us like about all of those things that I just said.
I mean, I think the answer is absolutely yes, because again, Bob and I can tell you, home ec, wood shop, civics class, life skills class, all of that stuff has stuck with me far more than modern European history did. I could care less, but I know how to write a check. I understand how local government works. I can sew. I can change the oil in my car. I can build things.
Happen. So if I were to say like, what do my kids need and what do the kids of the community need to like really thrive? It's the stuff that's not in the school curriculum. How to balance books, how to run a small business, how to understand an insurance contract, how to, navigate through state and federal rule requirements to operate. Those are the vital skills and they are nowhere in the public curriculum.
So one class I think that we do have that is very helpful is like life and yeah, like they do like the learning how to do taxes and budget your money, buy a car, all that kind of thing, which I think is really important because in real life you're probably going to buy a car and you're probably going to have to file your taxes, and I think that class teaches you more in one semester than I've learned in the last 5 years of math. Not that math isn't important, I think it is, but I also like trying to find the verb for sentence isn't quite as important as what you're gonna have to do in the real world. But like William was saying, I think there used to be classes that did like cooking, sewing, like repair, like that kind of thing, and they do that kind of thing at CATC, and they offer that. Also like health, like that kind of thing, like they teach you that at CATC, but we don't offer that at our school, and it will take up like half your day, so a lot of kids can't fit that into their schedule. But if we were able to offer that at our school as like a class or like one semester, like one period, instead of having to take up your entire day, and being able to learn like things you'll really use, like sewing, cooking, just like real life things, like maybe in like wood shop, that kind of thing, I think would be really cool. I think a lot of kids would be very interested. I can't cook to save my life, and I think a lot of kids are in the same boat. Those aren't really things we get taught at home anymore.
When I was in school, we had a life skills class, and I wish they had taught my kids that, because they don't know how to write a check. They don't know how to, we had civics classes. We learned how the community worked. And all those things are gone because people are going, you've got to test really well, and then you've got to go take the SATs, and then you go to college, and I just feel like the majority of people that's not going to be a viable path. So
Can I ask you about? We're saying what's interesting is kids, they don't use checks anymore.
Yeah, totally.
Right? My stepdaughter, 24, she doesn't have. Right.
I haven't written a check in years personally. I mean, there's apps where, I mean, they all use Venmo. You can get a Venmo debit card.
But still, how do you balance that? I mean, I get the point, absolutely, but it's just interesting that
And I think
checks aren't used anymore.
I think we rely on them.
The social skills and history, because if we don't learn history, then history will repeat itself, and we don't want massive genocidal events ever.
The academics.
But also with like what Maria said, the home ec classes, those definitely like provide you with life skills that would help you like once you get out of college or whatever you choose to do like after high school. And like stuff like that, stuff that will help you in like the real world. And relating to mental health, if like more people knew how to like cope with anxiety and stuff like that, I feel like there would be more people who can help people who don't, if that makes sense. Like if all of us knew how to like properly deal with like anxiety, and it's like different for everyone obviously, but if we knew like skills to help with that, we could help people who don't after, like if we meet people in the future or end up helping people who don't know how to cope with that, we can help them if we develop those skills or get more exposure to stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think that those things are important.
The theme throughout almost every student conversation, that they're reflecting on how they can use this to help the community.
that Carrie was. I was thinking if we can teach these kids to think on their feet, be independent thinkers, give them as many tools in their toolbox that they can pull from, but teach them to think independently. And if life changes halfway down that road, how are you going to change given the tools that are in your toolbox? Give them a self-confidence, you know, and that doesn't mean not failure by no stretch of the imagination, but it's how you're going to rebound from that failure and use everything that you've learned, whether
maybe being more focused on certain aspects of like some jobs maybe, or maybe also just teaching simpler adult stuff like stuff that everyone has to do, maybe like cooking or caring for family maybe.
Students are well aware that being an adult now, both genders, all genders, includes things like caring, cooking for a family, those kinds of things. And I think that this kind of reflects on, they have a sense that there's a whole bunch that they are going to need to know, and they don't know that they're feeling not secure about it. Yeah. But so go ahead, you have almost 5 minutes now. That was a lot. And I'll leave this up here, so if you wanted to kind of, if it was helpful to get your memory, you can start with little notes next to it.
Spell check.
In other schools' answers.
There's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of overlap, but there's also very specific differences between communities for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed at the kids' answers where they care more about others almost at the detriment to themselves. And I even wrote in here, what if the kids in Cape Elizabeth have that outlook, or is it just go to college? Did not expect that. Says the guy who worked at Colby and Bowdoin for the last 2 years.
Yeah, right.
There was nicer kids at Bowdoin than Colby, less snobby.
Yeah.
I'm actually astounded by the number of kids. I'll say it, I wrote it down. Is it public school's job to teach kids how to cook? Yeah, apparently.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna have quotes just about that.
Though. It used to
No,
be.
but it used to be like enhancement, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, how do I make sure my family eats?
Finish this and then have the discussion.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I got it started.
She's a good teacher. She's leading us there. We're not there yet.
Exactly, thank you.
Come on.
Yeah. I know
Class is lasting too long.
Yeah, yes. It's like, we gotta get through all the data, Becky, before we can do
Some
that.
of it's like making a response in.
I know.
Get it down, get it, right in there.
Yeah.
So true though.
It's maybe just like another minute or so for you, right? Reflect on that. It may have seemed like there was a lot of repeat, but there's also a lot of difference between why people wanted those skills, and which skills, and how they felt about them.
That's fair, yeah. I hear where you're headed there.
the question I put at the top of the form, what questions do you have? That will also help us to find answers in the data. This is like a little teaser, like, oh, what do you want to know more about?
Yeah, I put a few questions last
Great.
time, yeah.
Move on to this next topic along apropos of Becky's.
I was gonna say, way to lead us in there. It's all good, it's all good.
The schools and the community's role / interest in leveling the playing field. So this came up, it speaks to what you're talking about, but also some other things. And I think you can kind of see here in the topics where this is going. And these are teachers, community members, and students in this section.
Families right then, and it supports the kids throughout their whole, it starts them off on the right foot. I mean, education, I think we all agree education is important no matter what you're gonna do. And it's okay if you don't go to college, and it's okay if you do go to college, whatever you wanna do, but let us give you let us help you in that way and help your parents help you too. Provide those tools.
That was specifically in response to someone who said that free early childhood education should be available. And that person shared that perspective.
Almost everything is about your ACEs score, your adverse childhood effects score. If you'll end up in a healthy relationship, if you'll use substances, if you'll make it to graduation, it's all about those first few years. And sometimes that's discouraging for me as a teacher because we work really, really, really hard. But by the time they get to Kristen and Rayanne, some of them, they're too far off the tracks and it's not their fault. It's like when we were all little, it was just sort of assumed like, oh, they're going to go to this cute little preschool. These kids aren't there. Some of their parents are on drugs and they're not helpful. They're not parenting. And then it's like we're pulling them back by the time they're in pre-K. I just believe so strongly that all that effort we put into college should go to those first developmental years. I feel very, very strongly about this. And then it's like, if they get to college, awesome. They'll be so much better prepared and better workers if those first few years of their life are awesome years. And for lots of these kids, they're not awesome years. So I feel really strongly about that. And I know we're not going to fix this in our little group, but I wish those ACEs scores are incredible if you really look at the information behind them. And I'm constantly talking to coworkers about this, like it kills me. It really does.
So you're
But children don't ask to be born into poverty. They don't ask to be born to drug addicted parents. And we have to give them a fighting chance. That's the best gift that we could give them. And I do believe they'll give back. When somebody helps you out of a dark place, you typically remember that and you want to give back somehow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I was thinking that too, like there's a lot of kids who wouldn't have a lot of experiences or socially, just everything they get to do at school is like to kind of go opposite of what you were saying. If you think about all the experiences they have because of it, that some would get in other ways, but some wouldn't get at all. So it's kind of scary to think about that. So just the social and the relationships and the different experiences they see that they might not have is really important for some of them.
I feel like high school in particular has prepared me for college, not my life outside of college. I think that the experiences I've had that have made me realize what I want to do and what type of people I want to surround myself have come through my summer job. I worked for the Cobbessy watershed, so literally my career field, I did that all summer. My mom put me in camps with me and my sister went to camps since we were super little, farm camp, everything like that. And sports have taught me about more of a social thing and who I want to be around. So I don't really think that school has prepared me for life after college. Just the study skills and writing, speaking, things like that, which will help me graduate college. Don't think that school is geared towards helping people find out what they like, because everyone's different. And if I wasn't able to have the parents that I do, or the ability to do the things that I want to do with the help of my family, I don't think that I would know what I wanted to do, because I think it's impossible for everyone to find out who they are in an environment where everyone is forced to be doing the same thing.
And we have to be okay with the resources going in that direction. And I think that's the best gift that we can give those kids, is a chance at a better life. And that chance starts with compassion, kindness, acceptance, and education. That gives them a fighting chance to be better than what life has dealt to them. And if they together as a community. I think we could get our students involved in community service in nursing homes, so they can see what the end of life looks like and what those needs are, and that these were people that built this community, and part of our obligation is to give back. There's a middle ground somewhere where we have to come together as a community and a school to change the course and the path that some of these kids are on.
Student. And I agree with Kathleen about checkbook insurance. Those things could all be done in the high school. And I know people don't like to say that we're taking the place of a parent. We're not. It's just that if they were being taught it at home, we wouldn't have to worry about it, but they're not. So do we just say, who cares? No, we have to take care of those students. They are our responsibility as a school district. And I take that.
So we have a few minutes for you to reflect on these questions they bring up for you. How does it make you feel? Ideas?
Is she leaving? Okay.
A minute, 30 seconds or so. So the next section is about community and school integration and support. And this theme came up quite a bit with the community, parents, teachers. And the students mentioned it more in terms of their desire to kind of become a part of the adult world. They didn't have the same words for it as the adults did, but they talked about internship opportunities, a great swell of support for CATC from students, the desire to participate in that more, which of course isn't the same thing as being in the community, but it's more from their perspective. It's kind of leaving the school and being with adults who are working in their fields, it's that kind of thing. And also this idea that as I referred to in the very beginning, that you have parents and you have school, and that there's this third place, so to speak, which is the community. And how does the community support both so that school can do what it needs to do, parents have support to do what they need to do, and that students are kind of held in the center. So this will take you through that.
With the other participants. I think schools have all they can handle on their plate. I think that taxpayers are unwilling to add more programs back into the school that were taken away at one point. I think as a society, schools cannot fulfill all of the needs of children. We as parents and neighbors need to fill some of those roles. You can't expect to send your child to school and have them be the nurturer, the teacher, everything. You just can't. It's not possible. And schools can't fulfill that need. We have to be clear with what a school's role is and what it is not. And it is not to raise children. It is to educate children. And I think when we start mixing the two, we run into trouble. We mix the two because as educators and people who love children, we can't stand by and see a child not getting everything that they deserve. And we want to fill that role. But when schools start trying to fill roles that belong to parents, then we run into trouble, in my opinion.
I don't know. Do you?
She was on the school
side for a while, but if the district had a list of, say somebody's interested in books and libraries, things, that sort of thing, then Justin is on the list, and somebody's interested in construction, and Seth was willing to spend a couple hours a week, talking with a student. It doesn't have to be face to face, but just giving them some advice, or just talking with them, and you had a list of, say, 100 community members, so that the students had that opportunity, to contact those individuals. I think that would make all the difference in the world, and it might help.
Not sure I understood that.
Well, I think Justin brings up a good point, and with the youth, I think obviously getting them involved in community events or happenings would be a great place to start. So where the adults are participating, get some youth participating as well. And I think I think when whatever the appropriate age may be, the youth are able to participate, and you can inspire and then feed that curiosity if they can learn how things actually work and get done. I think that is very important, and it's gotta happen at some point in life, really, for them to be able to thrive. So that's a great healthy atmosphere to be involved in community events.
Justin here. So I think the thing that I'll kind of talk about is we have a collaboration with the high school where on Thursdays after school, teens can sign a form and come to the library for a few hours. We do activities, we hang out. We're working on expanding that next year where, like, instead of them just coming to the library, they might go down to, Gerard's and see how they make pizza or something like that. I'm just thinking back to, like, kind of my time as a teenager. I'm 42 now, so it wasn't that far away. But, like, just getting those experiences and being out there in the community and seeing how these businesses work and I've heard this name of this business all this time in my life. What do they actually do? Kind of a thing. Just, kind of, I guess maybe I guess I'm a librarian, so I should refer to a book. Like The Wizard of Oz, what's behind the curtain? How do these businesses work? How do these communities come together? I think there's so much, you can learn from that. And it connects in all sorts of different ways.
So in terms of like the culture, though, my initial thought when you were asking the question was that it's going to change significantly over time. And my reasoning for that is I think about like all of us who have stayed in Gardner. We've talked about really why are we still here? It's because we have strong family, amazing family connections. And we've all been talking about how these kids may not. And so what's the reasons that are keeping me here and a lot of us here, these kids might not have. And when it comes to relationships and marriages and significant others, it's totally different now. It's totally different. Their world is no longer Gardner, Maine. It's everywhere. So.
At the forefront, I think the people that I've met in these communities, I'm referring to Pittston, Randolph, Farmingdale, just kind of the surrounding ones in Gardner. Everybody has just this strong sense of giving back to this area and working together. And I think that's one of those things that needs to continue on. Just, maybe that's where the school steps in. Maybe there is a class that's community building that kind of, walks people through like, this is what we do in this town and this is how we all work together.
You can kind of see how there's this weaving back and forth between what school can do. It gets big, it gets tiny, it gets big, it gets tiny. And it's in that space of, that's where the juicy part comes in.
Yeah, so basically those teachers only have those kids for probably between 5 and 6 hours a day if you really look at it. And they are only in those 4 walls teaching those kids everything that they possibly can cram into that time, even though little Johnny is over there climbing the walls or whatever, because he needs some positive attention, or he hasn't had breakfast, or he hasn't even had supper, or who knows what happened. But we need to support kids. And the only way we can support kids being outside those 4 walls is by influencing them and supporting whatever we can for the teaching staff, in my mind.
Great, thank you.
And unfortunately, like stated before, there's not parents in the home that are doing this. So it relies on us as a community to all be teachers and coaches and confidants to these kids. They're all hurting.
We'll break. And then we have one more section. Seconds more. So this last section, I changed the name of about 100 times. But for now it's zooming in, zooming out, because there's some real specifics here, but there are also some big picture concepts. And I think that they will hopefully kind of tie together some of the threads from before in your minds. And you'll hear some familiar voices.
And the board chair, my opinion is that we're always trying, we're maybe approaching it backwards. And Alyssa, feel free to chime in on this. I think we approach it backwards. We're making a budget of what we can afford versus making a budget that is filled with things we need. And that's, I think that's a typical family problem. What can we afford to pay for? What's got to go? Rather than this is what the kids really need. So how do we present that in a way? We had some people not vote for to vote against the budget this year because they didn't think it was best for kids. I've heard that many times, that it wasn't high enough. And we approach it from how low can we go and still get the work done. And
this was something that was expressed by community members as well. It wasn't just featuring Becky.
It was just me, thanks. I have a terrible voice.
It always sounds like that to ourselves.
Investment, whether that's monetarily or just listening, or they need to the state needs to step up and say, if education is so important and everybody knows it, that we need to invest in children because eventually they're going to turn around and take care of us, then why aren't we investing in them totally, like all in?
Ginger.
One thing I've noticed about this community in particular, I think the highest value of the schooling system we have in this community is that people who get educated in this community often stay in this community. And so I think, and I'm not from here, I'm actually from Auburn, so it's been really cool to move to Pittston and kind of see the whole Gardner community from a teaching perspective. But people are graduating. We have so many alumni who now teach in our schools and, you know, have open small businesses and things like that within the community. So I think putting value in our education system has really benefited the community as a whole.
One of the topics that came up so strongly in the student conversations is it's enough to make it its own code, and that we're coding all this data is starting a business. I think there are some things that are unique about, that's one of the things I think is unique that I've heard here. And also this expectation that people are staying here. That's not common in most communities that I'm speaking with. The holistic expectation that is matched by a lot of what the students are saying. Sometimes the adults say it, the kids are like, no. But here they're talking about that too.
Well, to this community, there's an enormous sense of pride about this school and their what their students are accomplishing. I do think that they're, and that's worth a lot. That's really positive energy.
Place, but I've been embraced and appreciated the atmosphere of the 4 towns that are part of our school district, and being able to like reach out to any of the folks on this, like we're all one community. So
Yeah.
There's a great quote that you two might remember that will be in the report, and it is, there is no other side of the river.
Right.
Yes.
We talked about that specifically. We're not allowed to say that anymore.
Yep, perfect.
We're all the same one.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, things like this, in terms of if you want the community to evolve, we probably have to keep a discussion like this going to a certain degree. And I think that's I praise the district for however this idea may have come up. Hopefully some good ideas come out of it, and it helps move things forward. But that's going to be the big thing, is for the district to communicate with community members, not just, you know, nothing against the school board, but not just sitting there and say these 8 people or however many people are there, say we're going to decide what's to going forward. Actually take input from the community. I think that's the key. So on the community side of things, I think it's very helpful.
And Seth, to get him involved.
So take a few minutes to kind of gather your thoughts together on this last section. And again, you're going to have your own copy of this document. You can always go back and add some more to it if you want, but, and then we'll discuss. So. So you can, if you want, if you feel like you've said what you want to say, go ahead and push submit. Or you can hold on to it and when you, if you want to look at it again when you're at home and add some more to it, it's fine. I won't be working on it tomorrow, so I won't miss anything if you wait till tomorrow to send it. So up to you. But I wanted to play one last quote that it doesn't need to be up there, and the screen sharing, I emptied it and then I turned it off, and then I realized I wanted to play one more thing for you. And that is just, it did really mean a lot to the students to be asked to participate. It meant a lot to them. So here's just one, which I just think is just a beautiful quote. So I have to look at it.
And that you matter to your community. Probably when I got this email from like Pat Hopkins, because I was really stunned about that. So I don't know. I felt really excited when that happened. So
yeah. I just want to open up discussion about what you heard and what it meant to you. And I think as a part of our process, we usually start from this perspective of kind of gathering the group together, which we did way back when I came here first, to see what our intentions are. And then we go out and do all this deep listening in the community. And, you know, as Angela was saying earlier, like I've been soaking in it. It's in my dreams, it's everywhere, because, you know, there's so much, right? And so we do that. And now you're having a little entrance into it here. And then you're going to have the full report that will give you kind of our analysis of all of that, guided by the information you've shared and other community members, teachers, educators, and students have shared. But you'll also tonight have access to the whole collection. So you'll be able to go through any of the conversations across the whole bunch and just listen to everything. And so it's technically it's available to all the things that you've heard tonight are technically already public, and that's because the whole project is public. But for this part of it, it really seemed important too for you all to have time to process that, and then we open all of the collection up to be easily accessed by everybody next week sometime. And I think that's something that you probably also want to think about how to announce and make people aware of the value in that. And I think that for people, it mattered that it was public. They felt actually better about participating because it would be something that they could feel was assured that people would hear. Yeah. So go out and doing this deep listening. You all are going to be able to soak in it too. I'm sure once you get started listening, you will not be able to stop. So do it on a Saturday night when your spouse is out of town or something. But in any case, there's all that listening, and then and we'll do a mini version of that right now. And that's just, and then asking, so what's emerging? You know, what from all of that is the future that's emerging here at Gardner, and how you all are seeing that and perceiving it, and then building your school to create and support this future that is emerging here. And that's where the real difference is between different school districts, even if there are similarities in some of the things you might hear. How each school board and how each community perceives all of that and decides to go forward is really unique. So just to start that process here with this little bit, what is coming for people? And this is actually how I take notes. With all the technology, it's actually really helpful for me to just use my hands and write also. So yeah, I would love to hear from people what that was like.
I just wanted to say quickly, because I might get summoned, but having done Heart and Soul, which was 10 years ago now, and we did work with the Keystone group at the Boys and Girls Club. So we had a group of teens, and I remember really specifically, and we were at City Hall with them, and we asked them if they would stay in Gardner, like were they planning on living in Gardner? And several of them were very much absolutely, and the others were just kind of like whatever. And I think what I was hearing from all of those people is that over those past 10 years, we have successfully managed to retain kids in Gardner and that positivity of understanding what community is in Gardner and wanting to be a part of that and wanting to stay here. I think that's huge. Because a lot of the people that are moving here now, I've met a lot of new neighbors, and a lot of them are just so surprised that we have many generations back. You know, we have so many. My daughters are 6th generation Gardner. Like, it's just, they can't believe it. They're like, really? Where are you from? Maine? Really? Yeah, we're all from Maine. It's really important, and I think that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from all these people. And you know, when we did Heart and Soul, we had a lot of negative stuff. It was mostly, we really had to sift through a bunch of negative ideas. Mostly kind of people felt like there was a lot of contention. And what I'm kind of hearing is that people aren't starting out with their negative, you know, contentious, we fight about this budget or that budget. It's really a lot more about how can we get everybody together and prepared for when they're out of the school district.
Right.
Which I think is definitely a different way of looking at it. I think usually it is get the kids in school and go to college. And I feel like that's not what I'm hearing here, which I think is really positive.
We have another code, it's called I Love Maine. And there's a lot of that from the students.
Yeah.
Not everybody, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody. There's definitely stuff in there about like, I need opportunities in a bigger space. Like I want to be an actress. I want to be a dancer or for sure. But there's a lot, a heavy concentration. Plan to be here.
I'm really glad to hear that, because one of the things that, I don't want to say it worries me, but it's in my head. I've lived other places. I was born in Maine, and then went away to college, and then lived in Colorado, and then chose to come back to Maine with my husband. He married me because I was from Maine, and that's what he says.
That sounds familiar. I married my husband because he was from Maine.
There you go, see? So, and we have a lot of friends all across the country whose kids have flown the coop completely, you know? They don't stay in Denver. They go to Kansas City, they go to Salt Lake City, they go to other big cities across the country. And so the thing, and again, it's not a worry of mine, but I have all these other friends outside of Maine whose kids are all over the country. And yet my only concern is, are we preparing them? Are we making them brave enough that they could leave here? Because this is such a nice basket. It's such a safe place to be. We don't have shopping malls and billboards and all the distractions that happen as soon as you pass the liquor store in New Hampshire. We don't have those things, so it feels very safe here. I love that all of my kids still live in Maine and they have no intention of leaving because they love Maine. I just want to make sure, and I can't make sure, but I would, if I could control one thing, I might control that. But I just want to make sure that kids are brave enough to know that we'll still be here. You can go, you can fly, but we'll still be here and you'll still be from here no matter where you go. I just want to make sure that all of our kids feel brave enough to have that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Definitely, and that would come up from some of the students themselves, not feeling sure they could.
Right.
Yeah.
Not feeling sure they could make it in another environment.
Yeah. And no one use those words, to be clear. You won't find someone saying, I'm not sure I can make it in another environment, but you'll hear it in those stories. This is a safe place.
It's a very safe place.
And one student, you'll hear a really good pithy quote. He said, I need to learn how to fail. I need to learn how to have courage. I need to learn how to, it's a really great, and I couldn't include all the great quotes tonight. But he says it really well. You know, he wants more challenge so that he knows it's his choice to stay.
Right.
As opposed to feeling that this is the best, safest option. Yeah.
And I feel like I had that choice. You know, I grew up in Portland and was able to leave and go far, far away and stay far, far away for 15 years. And then it was like, okay, let's go back. So I just want to make sure that other kids get that.
They usually come back.
I hope so. This is really, it's the best basket, but know that.
One of the things I heard, which is a little taking it off course a little bit, but really that I was really listening around the school community intersection, how we all work collaboratively to help all these young people be prepared, how we're in service of each other. And I just keep tossing that around in my mind in the different ways we heard it. And I was like, so in school, we have a lot of formal structures, processes, pretty tight in a lot of places, loose in some, but not many. That tight, loose combination, like how do we create pathways for some of those more organic intersections between communities and schools that meet some of our procedures for safety and all those things, but don't hinder us from really forging really strong pathways that students can navigate back and forth between. And really, because we rely so much on formal leadership, how do we navigate towards those informal leaders, which are all these people all over our community who really want what's best for kids and for their community, and create that, reopen the doors basically to that. And there's no recipe for this, and it's like earlier when I said we learned our lesson when it was like, okay, stop just asking some people about who we can invite, after the all call, but like, hey, I know you're involved. We have a thing coming up on this night at this time. Can you help get some people? And all of a sudden, you got all these people. It's the same thing. We can learn how to be clear about what the need is, and we can find someone to meet that need. How do we make sure there aren't too many barriers for that?
And I'm thinking about very similar sense of how do we open our doors, right? So that our students have access to more information about our communities. And how do we do that before high school, right? So it shouldn't be once you enter high school, that's when you begin thinking about community service. That's when you think about really getting to know the community and what it has to offer. So, I think about one of our elementary schools, they will have a field trip walking down Main Street, right? So that the students have access to Main Street and get to see what's available. And we're starting a new initiative. I don't know if it's just getting off the ground, so you don't know about it yet. And it's with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's called 7 Up. And so our 7th graders will be spending a morning driving around the Gardner area and visiting various businesses. It's in the process of identifying which businesses, and the point will be to allow our students to start learning more about what is available and what the businesses do as a way of exposing them to potential careers. So as I think about school and what we can do to begin opening those doors, I think that's a small example. Day of Caring. That has changed significantly from when we did it. I think, a small example of something that we can revisit and consider as enhancing our relationships with our communities. So anyways, I'm just sitting here trying to think, not philosophically, I'm trying to think about concrete examples, things that we can take action upon in response to some of what I heard.
Because they expressed a lot that they want life experiences all through it. They want internships or whatever, anything. Some kids get to go up to the State House and pass messages to people, and that's gives them confidence. And they want to feel competent in their daily lives and know how to function as adults when they get there. It may be, well, I think it's a big thing actually, but I love to hear Chad at the graduation with the same tone of voice and importance say, Susan Smith will enter Northeastern University in Boston, and John Jones is entering the workforce, because all of it can be rich. And if we truly believe that, you know, and I can remember once as a guidance counselor, I used the word college with someone, and they said, he's never going to college. And I thought, I think we should change the vocabulary to after school continuation of education or something, because everybody needs that a little bit, even if it's on the job. And now I know why my father, I loved a class in college like religions of the non-Western world. And I always remember my father saying, and what will you do with that? You know, but it's, you know, there were kids like me, but there are a lot of kids who never would care about that. And that's okay, because we want them to function well. But I also heard a lot of frustration with teachers, and I take it as because they care so much. But to see kids, little kids, come from houses where the parents don't know how to be parents at all. I mean, we all make mistakes. And they can't do it all. But sometimes I think it's not that as big a leap as they think to learn different ways, different accents through you and other people, you know, how you make a kid feel good about himself, even if that is true. You know, I mean, I think, for one thing, I think the earlier they can get the idea that it's their education, not their parents and somebody else's that they're in charge of, you know, like when they go to their own, when they go to the parent-teacher conferences, as soon as they can take part, and a lot of things like that. There's so many ways. I remember when I was an elementary guidance counselor, separating those two things from teaching, I don't think it has to be that separate, you know? It's not a mysterious world to be a guidance counselor. You know, Tony knows it's not some magic thing. It's just handling it separately. And sometimes there are little ways without overwhelming teachers who are so stressed with just a different way of handling kids. What would you say, Tony?
I actually think I heard a piece in there that was like, I think it was a parent saying, or somebody was saying, teachers shouldn't be parents so much, but then somebody else was saying, parents should be teachers more. And so,
Yeah.
and so there was sort of the yin yang, but opposites in a way. And so maybe that's maybe kind of part of it is how to, you know, support parents making healthy choices. And the other thing that came to mind in there is that parent, you know, volunteerism drops off as kids get older. And so part of it's opening the doors, right? How do we open the doors to get them into volunteer, which they can totally do, but it changes because kids are becoming adults as they get older, you know, and so how do we recognize that? Because they don't want their parents there, probably. I bet my kids didn't want me in the building if I was, you know, when they were in high school. So, but sort of recognizing, you know, the kids' independence, the students' independence, or developing an independence, while kind of building where that, again, where that bridge is of teachers being less parents. I'm not sure I'm fully agree with that idea that teachers I think they bring parenting ideas in, right? I bring skills that I've learned as a father as part of my work too, which is as a school social worker. But then, you know, inviting parents to be teachers and to be part of it, that they are involved, that, you know, that sounds like a good place to build a bridge to me.
It's interesting you bring that up. We talk it at work with early childhood educators specifically about this all the time, because it never ceases to amaze me. So it's almost like empowering the teachers to voice their expertise about child development because they're experts in it. You don't need to have a background in child development to have a child. And like essentially anybody could have a child and raise them with no background or understanding of the development and how it happens over time. Teachers need that background. They have a really specific expertise in how to educate, how to interact with, how to observe, how to individualize, right? So empowering the teacher, not to be the parent, but to help parents better understand why we can't put juice in babies' bottles, right? Or why we can't let students run with scissors, right? Like those sorts of early childhood level brain of mine is really super important. And it doesn't surprise me that many teachers, especially young rookie teachers, aren't confident or comfortable in doing that because they've been drilled to understand that parents are the first educator. And I believe that to a degree because the teachers have a very specific focus and understanding, and it gets even stronger over time and experience of what they're seeing, why it's okay, why it's not okay, how to intervene, and that they also need the help of the parents in the community to help with that, but the parents in the community don't necessarily know how. So it's really sort of this like, how do we empower them and educate them to help us?
Yes, no.
Should have written this down because we're gonna ramble.
So unlike you.
I'm not from here, like, Alyssa, and it's, I was very, very shocked to hear how that is. And my sister has actually just moved back home to take care of my parents in Rhode Island. And after having graduated college and was from Atlanta and then the West Coast her entire life. And has remarked about how so-and-so is a loser, he never left town. Regardless of what he does, or, type of thing, because pretty much in Rhode Island, in my hometown, go to high school, you go to college, and the graduation rate is probably 100% from high school, and kids going to college is probably the high 90s too, and it's a public school. But then you leave. Most people go up to the Boston, Massachusetts area, or whatever, or you go somewhere else. It's rare to hear that, what I've seen here. And it's weird. I mentioned to Becky beforehand that I'm coming to a crossroads here pretty quickly of sending my son to Kents Hill or sending him to Gardner High School. And I justify it some ways, mandatory sports and stuff like that, the intramurals and everything, because he needs that. But then I see the support that he's had since we moved here in first grade, and the teachers that he's had has been unbelievable, and the support from Katie Gould to now Sarah Sims and everything. And part of me says, well, and we say, of course, we want him to go to college because that's the roadmap to success. But I don't know if he's gonna. So, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But then also the budget question. I'm not on the finance committee just because I want to shoot myself in the head.
It's really not that bad.
Same thing with negotiations. But it's
those are two very fun committees.
Trying to do the most with the least is what we're forced to do every single year. And the people who are going to complain about, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, well, they're probably the minority. Because if all of a sudden you say the 6% raise or 6% increase that we did last year, equates to $100 and something bucks, and that's a huge issue to some people. I mean, $2 just if they stand on principle is a huge issue for some people.
Right.
And then it comes to curriculum. The one teacher who articulated, I'm under all this pressure to do this, this, and this. And I had said I was raised by two teachers, but they were gym teachers. And my dad wouldn't say phys ed, he was a gym teacher. He taught 7th grade health. Yeah.
Or wellness in the high school I've learned.
Well, I mean, he taught 7th grade health, it was first aid. And, Dad didn't build lesson plans. He didn't do grades. His tests were, what does Mr. Lil drink? That was extra credit on the test, which was already ED approved to begin with. So you got an A basically if you showed up. So I had gone down the road of possibly doing it. Then after a year or two of being on the school board and seeing the amount of work that the teachers do, you don't appreciate it when you're a kid going through and they're not compensated enough, which is an age-old argument.
But then the way we do teaching, which is, the banking method, if you go way back into the genesis of education, stuff like that. Learn the
Your mom
facts.
probably wasn't a gym teacher.
Huh?
Your mom probably wasn't a gym teacher.
No, she actually was.
Oh, okay. Both your parents were gym
They
teachers.
both were, yeah. But mom got MS, so she only taught for a few years. But yeah, they were both gym teachers. One went to URI, one went to UConn. They met at the first school they taught together at.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
The best
Sorry to
stories.
interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
We're talking about the banking method.
Well, and it's just the what do we teach the kids? We all said checkbooks because we're old. Well, those of us who answered.
PowerPoint too is the old thing, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Slide
the
deck.
slideshow.
The slideshow.
Yep.
But the basic regurgitation of facts, the short-term memory, hell, it's how I got through college. Versus when you finally realize that learning, whether it's ancient religions or whatever else, might not be good enough except for being on Jeopardy. Trying to find the happy medium of what you have to teach the kids, the 3 R's versus what they might find interesting.
It's not so much that, but it's the how. How can you teach math skills, reading skills, writing skills that we know are important in a way that is, through sewing, through cooking, through in an interdisciplinary way, right? Like it's not about going to math class to learn math. It's about going to this life skills class where I'm also, accessing my math skills, enhancing my writing skills, using my writing, communication skills in that interdisciplinary way.
Trying to teach creative thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Problem solving.
Yeah, the young man who followed the bus route.
Yeah.
Didn't realize it probably could have been a 10-mile walk, but that's the way he knew he would end up at school.
Right.
If he went that way.
Right.
It's not the best way, but it's
Well,
a
in
way.
those recent experiences too, because I thought about that as well. In those specific minute experiences or interactions that we had with those students, they were hands-on students. One with his bike, this one with an instrument, right? Like they were very articulate that that's how they learn, that's what they enjoy. Little do they know, they're learning how to read music, how to, read, write, all of those things, but they're not calling it that because it's tinkering on a bike or it's playing an instrument. Yeah.
It's a hobby.
Yeah.
They spoke about that a lot. You heard a couple of quotes about that tonight, but really it's what you're speaking to there. The difference between the banking method and what you're talking about is having kids say, I'm interested in bicycle maintenance. You can learn a whole lot about almost anything through bicycle maintenance. But then how do you do that with the current protocols and structures and systems? And so it comes back to what you're talking about the porosity. How does the school district build using the appropriate structures, but to make it so that there are these openings for other people who are bicycle maintenance people for those connections to be made. And that's really a whole different concept of education. It is really philosophical. It's like that you're moving from kids have to know that to here are a wide range of things that kids are going to need to know to be successful in the world, because we're adults, we know that, but there's so many different ways for them to get that. It's not 80-minute, when students spoke at length about the 80-minute math class. And that after 30 minutes, all the work that was going to be done had been done.
Right. And they're not applying that to other areas of their life.
No.
Yet, anyway.
Yeah.
There was, a thing I noticed a little bit about, there was sort of almost this, maybe a little pushback against college, but sort of this very either or piece about college. Either you're going to go or you're not going to go. And I noticed a little bit of a gap, like that there wasn't conversations about certificates or associate's degrees or that kind of thing. And then the other concept that comes to me with that is like sort of embracing being a lifelong learner. So maintaining my curiosity and that like, oh, I want to learn this. And that's like a real feeling. And whether it's, non-Western religions or whatever you're interested in, like that's the thing I would really want to cultivate. And that's what drives people to do things that they don't notice they're working, right? Then they're, it's like fun and I'm curious and I'm like, doing a thing that draws me in. So anyway, yeah, just kind of building on those lines of, again, following interests that fit obviously within the structures that we have, but how important that is to, identify that curiosity and that interest and be able to continue to capture it after that 30 minutes, because then we were losing 50 minutes of interest, and it's, we're, approaching boredom after that, obviously.
Yeah, you'll find in there a good deal of the students being able to articulate what you were just saying. It's pretty amazing. I mean, young people having obviously been doing a pretty good job because they have a lot of really articulate, wonderful, intelligent things to say. But this idea that lifelong learning skills they understand how important that is. And they do not just want to learn through the life and work class is just everybody's favorite, I have to say. But it's not just about that. They really do understand that. And there's some really good quotes in there. You'll hear them just about, I really want meaningful learning. I don't want a packet. Like, just don't give me a packet.
I wonder why we don't integrate CTE and the regular school, and why we don't integrate those things. If you're going to take geometry, let's learn how to build a set of stairs. Use it in a very hands-on way. And I think that some people might be bored by that. Some students may hate that, but I think there's probably a lot of male students who would love to sling a hammer and pound a nail, and it could do something more than. Or female. I'm just thinking of my boy child. I was thinking of my boy child. But I also have a girl child who loves to change tires. And, she would never ask for help. She gets a flat tire and I get a flat tire, I'll change it, Mom. So I think if there was a way that we could integrate the learning of the classical education with the CTE education. And I think that would bring the stigma up that sometimes is accompanied with a CTE education. Those are the kids who aren't smart enough to do the other thing. Those are they're just as smart. It has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with your capacity, your interest, your ability to integrate. I just think I'd love to see us be able to do things like that.
Some of that, just to be clear, some of that, as you heard, is scheduling barrier.
Absolutely.
We only have access to CATC for half-day periods.
Yeah.
And so you can only fit to, a morning block of traditional academics in. Then you need to make sure the rest of your day is at the tech center. And for students who have competing priorities, right? They need to have X number of courses in order to get into the colleges they're looking for. And the programs at CATC or the resources available there would actually enhance their skill set and profile for those exact same courses. Right. So, there's work to be done to partner between the home school and the technical center school to create a better overlap which is what is.
And I'm not trying to be negative.
I know, but I also want to just make sure, if we do have listeners on here,
yes,
there's real barriers to that, but it's not impossible, and it's a good idea, and we want to hear the students and really think through our goal from this is to learn and think through where are there barriers that we can remove.
Yeah.
Where are there opportunities that we can short-term add, long-term add, and then where's the change? And how do we make that happen? You folks coming to some priorities around that and deciding where strategically can we do that? Because that tends to it's not a quick fix, right? That's a strategic process over time that will require the plan that you're going to develop.
It's a decade.
It's like steering the Titanic.
If you think about it's a decade, and it is a decade, these are the kinds of things you're talking about, and those are 10-year sorts of things. If you think about your current fourth graders, they'll be 20 in a decade.
Yeah.
So it's happening. And there is for those of you who like to follow this kind of thing, there is in the legislature right now talk about this exact thing.
Yes.
So
yes, there is. Yeah, I serve on the legislative committee, so that there's bills. Tons of bills like this coming up.
I just thought of one comment that I sprung off what you were starting to say. I think Angela, this concept of mentorship kept popping up for me too. Community leaders that have been here for generations, I lean on them because I didn't grow up here, so I have to go ask the path, the way it's done, right? To understand and raise my hand. And then I just had my 5-year anniversary from our Hamlin school closing, and I had like that, remember that.
It's been 5 years.
Totally, right? And I was like, and I learned and said I would be involved. And you know what I did is I handed it to my daughter and said, hey, just read this Facebook post. She's like, wow, you've been on the school board since then. I'm like, yeah, remember I said that's what I was gonna do, right? Or one time actually, Jack had said to me, your kids see all these things you do. Do you realize that? And I was kind of like, oh, yeah. Like I like being involved in Girl Scouts and being that mentor, and you kind of don't notice, but I think the community does that too. Like people don't notice, but you end up in a room and you're like, hey, I know you from wherever, and I can just come ask you a question. And it sounded like the students were kind of saying that too. The teachers were, and it, like, that's one thing, they're all pretty vocal. Like nobody's sitting back and being like, well, I'm not going to share today. They're pretty good about sharing, right? And then putting it out there. So that stood out for me. That was a good theme.
There was one thing in the very first question you had, a young, I think a female student said something about that she had 2 jobs and went to school and there was nothing left for her. She was so busy. And this is how a lot of their parents are too. They're working so hard.
Right.
And talk about cooking, they do takeout because nobody has time to do that.
Right.
And that's a life all over the country, I think, where everybody's on roller skates and these kids don't get talked to or listened to or have social contacts.
And that's a really, that was a really important theme that came up. And it, you know, it's one of the ones I knew that you needed to hear tonight. I wanted you to hear that, but without too much, you can dive into the conversations, but it's definitely there. And I think the parents feel that. The parents really feel they need the support. And one of the things that they mentioned specifically was the Boys and Girls Club being a real support because they knew their kids were getting a really good community experience there. And they felt good about them being there. It wasn't like, oh, compromise. It was like, okay, I gotta do my thing, but I know they're getting social, they're getting food, they're getting this wonderful, they're growing up with these kids here. And so, yeah, but we had several kids share those kinds of stories. And then so really lovely quotes from students who said that they had, teachers who would cut them a break and say, you know, I know, turn it in tomorrow, no 0 for you, you know, and that meant everything to them, that somebody saw how hard they're working. And I think that's something for this group to really consider too, like knowing how hard everyone's working. How can this structure support them instead of having them feel, oh, if the teacher doesn't say, turn it in tomorrow. Right, there's some examples of students sharing that, actually not sharing that result, but sharing when it went well. And I think that your point about the positivity, it's all in how you ask the question.
Sure.
Right.
You know, and so it's like looking for my experience and then how can we move forward from that? And so there was very, very little negativity at all. It was all like, you know, here's some experiences we've had and let's move forward together. Yeah.
Great. Hey, do you want to do a time check? We said 2 hours. It's 8:20. It's
We're just on,
Yes.
because we didn't start till 8:15.
True, we started late, but it's been two hours, so. Who's gonna put my adult children to bed? Yeah. Some of the adults in this room need to be protected.
Yeah, seriously.
A long week. Yep, my adult children came home.
So the next step, just to let you know, we're gonna give Pat and Angela and Becky a report for them. We're gonna meet on that on the 31st.
Did we set?
I think we did.
Okay.
I think we did. I think it's
Near the end of the month.
it's near, I think I'll get the report to you ideally, I'm aiming for the 31st, that we're meeting that next Monday or something. So we'll go over that and, you know, make, if there's even, you know, some other little questions to attend to dig back in. And I think that the question I really had for you, Pat and Angela, that I emailed earlier was, I think it might be worthwhile, just to say also, we had fewer conversations than we set in the agreement from the beginning. So we have some conversations left. It might be, I think, worth delving back into some of the educator questions, some of the things that the educators brought up to really hear their voices more clearly on some of their experiences. And I think that would help you with all the kinds of things that you're talking about right now. And I think no one ever said asking someone's opinion doesn't build goodwill, right? And I think that if the teachers, educators don't really find that it's interesting, they won't sign up. But I think it would be worthwhile, so it's something for us to talk about.
I do not have you on my calendar. So
You're just gonna send it to us. right?
okay, but
And
we
then-
were gonna meet, you said that we had a meeting scheduled.
I think it is I think it's the first Monday in April, but let me look. Because
So
I'm the
that
one
would
with the
be
concussion, so.
April.
We should have
April
known.
April
3rd.
3rd. I
think
do
it's
not
April
have it on my
3rd.
calendar.
It is April 4th.
It's April 4th.
At 4:30.
April, oh, I do have that. Yeah, I do have it.
But she was gonna send it to us before that.
By Jingy,
Correct.
there it is. Correct, yes. But I was still looking towards the end of March and like, it's not there, it's not there.
There it is.
2 days to bring it.
Okay. So do you
I'll
want
be
to
traveling.
embrace her recommendation of going back and doing educators? I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I think so.
It's time and people willing. I mean, I think you two know best what to dig into, but yeah, this sounds like a good call, right?
Touch base about that, yeah.
I'll be traveling that day from Orlando, but I'm gonna try and, it's not a fun trip. Don't look at me like I'm going to Orlando for Orlando.
Like Disney.
Well,
Mickey Mouse.
I think all of Florida is Disney right now, so.
Oh, man. It really is.
Well, it is. It's just like a wild ride. isn't
Party
it?
time.
Party time.
I don't know what it is. I've stopped
I don't know, but
looking.
anyway, there's a national school board conference that's there, so it's a working trip.
So that day doesn't work for you.
Well, it might. I just have to check when my flight coming back is.
You can adjust, but if we do
Yeah.
that like before too long, just to make sure we can.
I've learned something really interesting. I'm gonna fly out of Augusta. Flying out of Augusta is cheaper than flying out of Portland or Boston.
Have you ever flown out of Augusta?
That's how my dad does it. He flies to Florida out of
Call us when you
Augusta
get
all the
back
time.
and tell us how it went.
I will.
Every
Well,
year.
so what it does is, have you done that?
You
fly to Boston.
It's
Can
not
you wait for the police officer? We gotta go. I'll tell you.
Thank you so much.
Was it horrible?
Are you taking Cape Air, Becky?